So this blockade in the Straits of Hormuz, we've been talking about it. I've made a number of videos about different aspects of it. And this video is very important because it answers the biggest question that we haven't really dealt with, which is, okay, what does the impact of the Straits of Hormuz blockade by the Americans look like to the Iranian economy? What does that collapse of the Iranian economy, that choking of Iran, what does it actually look like? And that's what we're going to get into in this video. We're going to do it very simply. We're going to play a clip of Victor Davis Hanson talking about this. He's actually talking about an article that he read that detailed some of the economic impact. And he shared a little bit of his own insights. And at a couple of points, I'm going to pause what he's saying and just fill in a few blanks and share a little bit of my own of what I have to say about this. But here we go. So let's just get to Victor Davis Hanson, and we'll take it from there. Here we go.
Well, I like that article because it was analytical and empirical. What he was saying were certain aspects that people had forgotten that they are receiving in their aggregate income about, was it 430 something million a day, Jack? In oil, petrochemicals, and
just to say the collective economic damage.
yes, collective
is that 435 million.
And
a
you can
day.
see how, because there's everything they have from washing machines to tires that has to be imported, and you can stop everything if you control the Strait of Hormuz. And everybody talks about, well, they have the Caspian Sea or they have a port on the other side of the strait, like the Gulf of Oman. No, that he points out that those are very minuscule areas of oil export. The big.
And let me also add that that General Kane said yesterday, and also Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, said that it's not only the Straits of Hormuz that are being blocked off, but all Iranian ports are being blocked off. Just adding that in.
Enchilada is Karg Island. Unfortunately for the Iranians, it's way deep in the Persian Gulf. So they came up with the idea they want to blockade that, fine. And they say, we're only going to let pro-Iranian ships in, fine. But they don't have the wherewithal to enforce that. If they send out their narcotic-like PT boats, the Warthogs, they can destroy them. If they try to blanket the Gulf states and Israel with missiles, Trump will lay the blow. He will take out their dual-use generation and stuff, and that will stop that very quickly. So what Trump basically did, Jack, is he said, okay, blockade. Good idea, but you're the wrong people blockading it. We're going to have a blockade, but we're going to borrow your idea that it's selective. So we're going to flip it upside down. You say nobody but pro-Iranian people can come in. We're going to say nobody but anti-Iranian are going to come in. So any ship, and they're going to have a problem with China because that's 80% of the ships coming in to get the oil will be Chinese. But they're going to have to turn back. That'll be explosive if they try to do it. I think eventually Trump will do it. And China will get angry, and we'll see what happens. But we have the wherewithal to stop it. And a couple of things are going to happen, as he points out. They don't have the storage capacity just to keep pumping oil and add it into Karg Island big fuel storage depots or into ships that are idle there. At some point, very quickly, in a matter of days, they're going to fill all those things up. And as he points out, with oil wells, if you just shut them down, they have to be maintained and they get water seepage, and it's very hard and expensive to reboot them. So that it's a very intricate process. And he said they're not going to be able to have any petrochemical or oil income because they're not diversified with their ports like the Saudi.
Now that's a very interesting point, that oil wells they're constantly running, they're constantly pumping, and you can't just turn them on and turn them off. And if the Iranians can't ship their oil out, then when the tanks fill up, because it has to constantly be offloaded so that it can keep pumping in. Once they fill up and if they have to turn off the oil, it's very difficult, or not difficult. It takes time to ramp it back up, and that adds another layer of difficulty to the Iranians here, from this whole situation.
Saudis or the Emirates. And he made another good point. I had written about that this morning, but I wrote it a couple of days ago, that they don't understand the Gulf. They think it's going to be forever 20% of the world's oil leaves. And therefore, they are critical because you've got to go close to their shore, and they're going to enter. And they just keep talking about that. And while they're talking, they don't see the world is changing, and it's changing rapidly. The Saudis now export most of their oil to the Red Sea. If the Houthis get orders to stop it, well, Trump bombed them for 56 days. And the Israelis and the Americans can shut down their power, their water, everything if they try that. They're going to build probably another pipeline to the Red Sea. They're talking about building one across the desert through Jordan to Haifa or near Jerusalem. They're talking about...
Okay, he's not exactly accurate here. Let me add in something. So there is a pipeline currently in Israel that for oil that runs from Eilat to Ashkelon. From Eilat to Ashkelon. Now, Eilat sits on the... Hold on a second. Is there another picture here? No. Eilat sits on the Israeli side of the Gulf of Aqaba, which is at the top of the Red Sea. Let me pull up another map here. So here's Saudi Arabia. Here's Yanbu, where the Saudi pipeline, all the Saudi oil that's been diverted across to the Red Sea because of this conflict is coming out at the port of Yanbu. And then what it's doing now is they're sending it down through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. But what he's saying here is they want to build another pipeline up this way. There actually is a pipeline. Like I said, there's a pipeline right here from Eilat up to Ashkelon, which is right here. Okay, so from Eilat up to Ashkelon, there is such a pipeline, and this is all part of what could potentially happen with Saudi-Israeli normalization. Is that you could have you could have an oil delivery system that completely bypasses any unstable countries at all. You could have it come out here, go up to Eilat, and then or just make a pipeline. You could just make another pipeline that goes up and connects with the pipeline in Eilat, and that then moves up to to Ashkelon, and you have ports all along the Israeli coast. Okay, that's I think what he was referring to. Maybe he wasn't being precise, but yeah, that pipeline already exists, which means that it's not even so far in the future. If with Saudi-Israeli normalization and trade relations, you wanted to have oil shipped out to the Mediterranean and to Europe that way. Okay, let's get back to the rest of
about expanding the one that already exists in the Gulf of Oman, where you could get the oil before you got near the strait. And at the same time, they think that nobody will touch their oil because it's critical to the world price. Maybe, maybe not 1 or 2 million barrels a day, but Ukraine and Russia are talking about a ceasefire. You put Russian oil at full capacity on the market. You put Venezuela, which is increasing every day a little bit, their oil output, and Trump says he's going to have another 1 million barrels. You could say to the Iranians, as long as your regime is in power, you're not going to export any oil. Not today, not 6 months from now, and the world economy would make the necessary adjustments, is what the writer is saying. So he's basically, I think he's basically telling us that it's a political challenge to Donald Trump. They have counted on the left to embolden them. So their strategy is to indulge in a crude stereotype of the middle. They want to do a rug deal, and they want to barter and barter and barter and feign anger and back and forth, and they want to draw that out for 3 to 4 to 5 months. And they want the economy to stall, the world economy, and then they want the left to come in and take the House and take the Senate and cut off funds and stop the war. I don't think that's going to happen. That's their.
This is a very important point, that the Iranians' negotiating strategy is always to kick the can down the road and make the negotiations go on as long as possible. with the belief, and it's a correct belief in terms of how Westerners usually think, that as long as there are negotiations going on, they're still surviving, and they're still licking their wounds, and they can, and their goal is always survival, and that there could be more concessions down the road if they continue to feign anger and keep negotiating and negotiating. That's always what they do. And that's why Trump is always setting deadlines for them, very short deadlines. You saw that in the negotiations, the original 60-day deadline before the 12-day war, which then, as soon as it was up, the Israelis attacked. You had other deadlines now, very short, quick deadlines. That drives the Iranians crazy because their goal is always to prolong things. It's how they operate.
Strategy. But what he's trying to argue is that strategy requires a quiet population that can be intimidated, as it is now, but permanently so, and it requires some economic viability to survive. And they're already can't afford food, they can't afford gas, they're under attack, they've lost probably $500 million, $500 billion in weapons and infrastructure that was accrued over 47 years. They can't rebuild that, and they can't give money to the Arab terrorists that there are 4 proxies, 5 proxies in Syria and Iraq and Lebanon and Gaza and Yemen, without angering further the population. And as I said in this article, it's one thing to tell the population, well, you don't like us, but we restored the Iranian credibility. Everybody's afraid of us. We're the terror master. And now the people are saying, no, you're not the terror masters of the Middle East. You're a paper tiger. You're buffoons. They've wiped you out. We're going down the toilet with you. This is what you did. Nobody's afraid of you anymore. You're a bunch of clowns. That is fatal to a dictatorship, to be humiliated and to be an object of ridicule. So he points all of that out, I think, quite successfully, as did Michael Duran, who always has important things to say. He says 7 myths about the Iranian war. So I guess to sum up, the left is in a bubble, and it's all frenzied because Trump is under such criticism by Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly or Candace Owens, and they say, oh, the MAGA movement's blowing apart, and everybody's saying it's lost. And they don't look at the situation. They don't look at the actual it's the most asymmetrical war in memory, and Trump can adjudicate when it starts and when it ends. And if he wants to take up the Iranian challenge, it'll be very interesting when American warships go through there and they've completely demined the area this week, and tankers follow them, and they start to bring in those little mosquito boats and see what happens. I think you'll see a whole fleet of warthogs in the air, and they will blast them out of the water, and I think they will hit any missile within 2 or 3 minutes. They'll know where it was launched. They'll take that out, but they're not going to stop there. They're going to tell them, okay, you're broke now. You've got $400 million in economic damage plus per day. Wait till you don't have any power, and that will really shake up things. And somebody said, well, that would be inhumane. Well, then talk to Bill Clinton, because he shut down the power grid at Belgrade almost for a day or two every week. He did. And talk to Barack Obama. He shut down television stations in Libya. He shut down the ports. He tried to do a lot of stuff, which he said he didn't do. So there's a long tradition of dual-use targeting.
Okay. The last thing that I want to say about this has to do with what he said about Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Megyn Kelly, and the left painting this caricature of Trump. And I want to show you what the Iranians are doing with that. Before we go on, please make sure to click the link in the description of this video. Let me just pull it up here. To subscribe to Israel 365 News daily newsletter and the Israel 365 Action weekly newsletter. That'll keep you up to date and informed on news analysis from Israel from a conservative and biblical perspective. It'll also give you information about programs and exciting webinars and everything that we're putting out at Israel 365 Action. And you can really join the fight to defend Western civilization. and get involved in that. And you might want to also check out Israel365action.com, but just sign up here for the newsletter, and it'll keep you really plugged into everything that we're doing. Okay. So what I wanted to show you is that in Iranian state media, they've recently started leaning in to the messaging that America is controlled by Israel. So look at this. Look at these two items. This one was on the front page yesterday, and this one, and then on the same day they also released this one. So here we go. The one on the front page yesterday: Netanyahu's shadow over Trump, a fracture between U.S. power and policy. In recent days, a growing debate has taken shape across America and American political and media circles over the extent of Benjamin Netanyahu's influence over Donald Trump's decision-making, an argument that has moved beyond elite analysis into public discourse and social media. Unfortunately, this is true. All the, that whole side of the spectrum, and it's not, he kept saying leftists, but, having this caricatured view of things, but unfortunately, it's not the left, unless he's considering Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, all of them left, which is a whole other conversation. But you have it on the right, and people like Steve Bannon and Tucker and Candace and Alex Jones and all of them screaming about Israel first. It's more than them. It's a big, unfortunately, it's a sizable segment of the MAGA movement is screaming about how America has become Israel first and how Trump is controlled by Netanyahu. So the Iranians are leaning into this, because by leaning into that and by echoing that language, they're actually, and it's working. If you look on social media, they're getting these guys in America to be more sympathetic to the Iranian position, because the Iranians are echoing their own language, right? Analysts have portrayed Vance as a figure with limited decision-making power. All the stuff that the isolationist right wants to hear. And they say here, in this regard, analysts such as John Mearsheimer have described the current situation as strategic deadlock for Trump. He emphasized that the United States is simultaneously facing two major challenges: Iran, which appears to hold the upper hand in the conflict, and Israel, which, according to this view, may be preventing Washington from exiting the crisis, even at the expense of U.S. national interests. Okay, so that's that story. And then they have this story: Galibaf, U.S. must adhere to agreements and abandon Israel first policy. Now, that phrase "Israel first" was coined by Steve Bannon and those others in that group, like Kurt Mills from the American Conservative, and Tucker Carlson and the rest of them. Mohammad Bagher Galibaf, the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, issued a statement via social media calling for the United States to fulfill its diplomatic obligations and shift its regional priorities. In a post on X, the speaker emphasized that the United States must comply with established agreements and urged Washington to move away from what he described as the Israel first mistake. Galibaf further underscored the strategic bond between Tehran and regional movements, stating that Iran and the resistance share a unified stance. Okay, that's the whole story. In other words, abandon Israel first. They're leaning in to the language and the messaging of those voices in America who are opposed to the war, and therefore getting more sympathy from that wing of the Republican Party. That's what they're doing. It's all a desperate attempt to survive. But the main upshot of this video is how the economic warfare actually ends up looking. That, he laid it out really nicely there. The amount that Iran is losing every day, and the strain, the rapid strain that it's going to put on their economy, and the inability to play their normal game. Their normal game in negotiations is to kick the can down the road and drag it out. But as Victor Davis Hanson pointed out, they can't really do that here, because with the economy being strangled, you can only drag out negotiations if at home domestically you're not also in this crazy pressure cooker. But because the economy is being strangled, they don't have the luxury of dragging out negotiations. So the blockade has a double effect. It has the effect of actually strangling the economy and potentially bringing the regime to its knees, but it also has the effect of accelerating the negotiations, which is exactly what the Iranians don't want. They want to slow them down. Okay, that's a very important point. Please let me know what you thought of this video. Drop a comment below. I try to read as many comments as I can. I'm shutting down for the weekend, so Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Have a great weekend, and let's keep let's keep in touch and keep following what's going on. Keep your eyes glued to this channel. I'm trying to give you as in-depth and clear analysis and coverage of this war and everything else going on in the Middle East as I can. And I really appreciate the way this channel has grown, and that's due to all of you. So keep liking and sharing and getting people to subscribe. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And God bless.